Welcome back, everybody, to Healing Hearts. I'm your host, Jessica Holland. First and foremost, if you clicked on this episode, I commend you for your curious heart, because I know the name of it may sound just so random. Hopefully you will be impacted in a good way from this podcast, this episode here. Okay, let's dive right into it. As we know, the human mind is such an amazing place, thing, entity, you name it. We can all be thankful that we are clothed in our right minds. But what does that mean to you? When you think about being in your right mind, do you just think about you're thinking the right thoughts? But where do these right and wrong thoughts come from? It comes from our environment. It comes from our background and the way that we were raised. So who truly decides what's right and what's wrong? After all, everyone's idea of what's right and what's wrong was independently formed from situations that some way, somehow shaped them. And if not situations that they have been through, it is from individuals whom are in the same environment as them, letting them know, like, hey, this happened to me and this is what came about. Then there forms an opinion about something. There forms a belief about something. There forms just pathways. Ultimately, you're building pathways through your mind about it. Like Earl Nightingale once said, people are there because that is exactly where they want to be, whether they will admit it or not. I know this sounds quite harsh, in spite of some of my past episodes encouraging to be more just gentle with ourselves. Yet hear me out. I, like many of you, have overcame painful situations, things and situations that I thought for sure would break me, whether it was sexual abuse, addiction, loneliness, depression, you name it. Despite my journey, now I am thankful. I say that because I have overcame a lot of these things. Yet there was and will always be a way out. That is my firm belief about just anything that we go through. But also, just with deep thought of what Earl said, I can't help but wonder, does a person have control of how they even got there? You know, I had to do a deep dive search. I wanted opinions and I wanted scientific evidence and I wanted experiences when I was just doing some research on this. So through my research of what I've encountered and gathered towards this is that there is no black and white answer. There's no yes or no answer. So that is my answer. My answer would be yes and no. You see, the mind, as wonderful as it is, it's like a fertile piece of land. And what do we know about land? In the right place, depending on whether you're in a deciduous forest or in tropical forest, something will always grow in there. Now, with the mind being so fertile, it doesn't care what you plant within it. It's going to choose to grow because we are the ones that place the seed and pat the ground for it to take root. This is one of the most harsh realities that one can truly comprehend about the mind, that it is so fertile that these thoughts that drop in, despite them being an option for you to accept them or not, whatever we choose to accept, that is the seed that we are planting, or that is the seed that we are watering. If we are just affirming something that we have already thought in the past over and over, we're just watering it. As you can see, we're going to touch base first and foremost on the part that, yes, we do have a say in the circumstances that we are reaping right here, right now, in your current hour, day, you name it. So that seed of a thought, if you are reaffirming it, it becomes an attitude. Think about it. Whatever thought you continue to place in your mind and allow it to follow through, because once we feel an emotion for 90 seconds, it can be stored in your body. When you start to realize these things, you're like, whoa, let me not even finish that thought. I know I do sometimes in my mind. I'm like, I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to change my thought right off the bat. I'll interrupt my own thought because I understand from my day-to-day and experiences that I have been through how powerful the mind is. I remember going through so many years of just thinking suicidal thoughts and unfortunately acting it out a few times. And I think back and I'm like, these were the thoughts that got me to that point. So I know not to allow that back into my life. It is just so easy to get caught up in a string of thoughts. And once again, so a seed of a thought that you reaffirm, when you reaffirm it enough times, it becomes an attitude. An attitude, if you reaffirm that enough, then it latches on and becomes a belief. As I was reading this and some of the neuroscience journals that were published, I was like, wow, it makes so much sense to me. It makes so much sense when you begin to look at your own thoughts from an outward perspective, or even, I'm a big people watcher. Even as you watch people or conversate with people, you understand and you begin to acknowledge like, wow, you know what? That is why they're like that. And I accept them and I want to love them for the level that they're at. And I might not allow them in my life, but I want to love them at the level that they are at. Or, wow, I can gather that this individual is kind of triggering me in a manner that is going to cause me to grow in the right manner. So I want to keep them in my life and I want to become better. Because just because somebody triggers you, it doesn't always mean that it's a bad thing. So anywho, once you reaffirm an attitude enough, it latches on and it becomes a belief. By this time, the cycle of the attitude is happening subconsciously. It's happening subconsciously to the point where we think the belief is a truth. When we believe something is the truth, nothing can detour us from it. Think about how dangerous that is, and also think about how dangerously good that is. When you have a built-up self-concept, no one can detour you from that. When you learn yourself, no one can take that from you. You are like that tree that is planted by the water. Now, the interesting part about this information is that another way belief is described is a subcontract. And by this time, there were just so many tabs open, not only on my laptop, but so many tabs opened in my mind. I was like, wait, what? A subcontract? When I seen that, I thought to myself, wow, a contract. Like, in other words, we have literally signed a contract when we allow these string of thoughts to become an attitude, these attitudes to become a belief. And there it is. A contract that we have subconsciously signed over to the point where we may not even realize what we have done. So then, now after a string of related attitudes get affirmed and solidify also into a belief, it forms into a perception. And perception is how you see the world. Perception is in the way that we may end up treating others because of the way that we see them or the way that we see ourselves, aka our understanding of reality. Perception can be what leads us to our everyday choices, behaviors, all of that, including our relationships. Then boom, we find ourselves exactly where we are today. What an impactful yet almost invisible cycle we are all participating in right now, this very present moment. Now moving along to the other side of the spectrum, the no side. The no side is the part of ancestral trauma being passed down. And sometimes people don't look at ancestral trauma because they may not know what past family members have gone through. I know for me, I grew up in a household where we didn't really talk about emotions. I didn't really know my real father. We left in the middle of the night to escape him. And the only father figure that I did have, we weren't that close, despite him, teaching me a great work ethic and things of that nature. I knew that my parents were just surviving. I knew that they were just doing what they were taught to do. And coming from parents that were immigrants, I just think it's just a different level that I had to wake up to. Being born in the States and being raised here and not truly understanding how they grew up, not just where they grew up, but what they went through. Then there's other families that, yes, they were, emotionally bonded, but at the same time, there are still things that once they were talked about, they were never to be talked about again, or things that maybe some families talk about so much to the point where the children are thinking that they're living through that, but in actuality, that is not even happening any longer in their lives. So I looked at this study from Emory University where male mice got a shock on the foot after smelling the scent of cherry blossom. And I just thought this was a very interesting experiment. So by the third time that these mice got shocked on their foot, like any other mammal, they showed fear when the smell of cherry blossom was released into the cage because that's what they associated it with. After conditioning the male mice, they bred them with female mice. The female mice were never shocked, but they were exposed to the smell. So then, the first and the second generation of these mice, their offsprings, they were afraid of the smell, even though they were never conditioned to fear it, even though the mother female mice, they never were shocked after smelling it. It was only the male mouse, essentially, that went through this. So to me, this was really wild because I was like, wow, that's truly an amazing study on how ancestral trauma can work within our lives. And you see it sometimes in therapy with different individuals. They fear different things that they may have never even encountered themselves. Or that's why sometimes you see children with habits of family members that they have never even met. I remember watching this documentary that this man's daughter would make same facial expressions and even say same sayings from his sister that had passed away when they were children. And I thought to myself, like, how does that even happen? But when I was reading about this study in the university from Emory, I was like, wow, these things can be passed down. And at the same time, people not even understand what's wrong with them. But it wasn't even ours to hold in the first place. That's sometimes why you may question some things that doesn't even belong to you. So this study suggests that that's why children have characteristics of their parents or grandparents that they have gone through, that their parents have gone through. That's the part that makes me think and want to say no. To an extent, we do not have control of where and what situation we are within this very moment. Something encoded within us that we may not even have asked for from a past generation. And something that we look at, like, for example, we look at oh, same hair color, same eye color, but no one really thinks about like other things that they may have gone through. I remember reading about therapists posted something about their patient. Obviously everything was kept confidential, no names, nothing of that nature. Posted about their patient, how she was cutting herself and harming herself, and she didn't understand why. But it turns out that her grandfather had harmed himself, and in that process ended up harming the grandmother. It was strange because she never met the grandparents. And I guess that now when she went to therapy, the therapist was asking if there was anything that had happened with anyone in the family, not just cutting themselves, but harming themselves. And they explained that situation. She explained that situation to him. And he told her, when you feel like cutting or harming yourself, talk to your grandpa and ask him to forgive himself. Talk to your grandma and comfort her. Let her know it wasn't her fault. Obviously, this is more of a different approach than normal therapy where you receive medication and just talking about different experiences. But the girl, she did that, and she ended up never cutting again, which is so wild to me when you really think about why we do different things that we do. And you have even individuals that from the smallest thing, like, oh, my parents smoked, so now they ended up being smokers as well. It can be things of that nature. Or it can be even, typically they say that a family that is on welfare goes back 3 generations. And of course, I'm looking at statistics and different experiments and different things that were posted. But at the same time, you can see all around you how our thoughts come into play if you choose to accept this. Now, how do we get out of this? How do we break free from something that we didn't even ask for? I don't think, after looking at all of this, I don't even think it matters whether it's a yes or a no anymore. What I can say is that after you have decided whatever your answer may be, whether it's a yes, you can control it, or no, you can't control, or neutral side, you can really start your journey after you come to the realization, like, yes, I may have chosen that thought, or no, I did not choose that trauma, but I will choose to move forward from this, or I will give them their belief back to them with peace, knowing that they don't even know any better at times, knowing that individuals sometimes are just literally living on autopilot, living the same 30 days over and over and over. And all we can do is start to be awake to the journey that is literally becoming the best version of ourselves. I named this episode Compatible Soil because after facing our truths of where we are, we can plant thoughts of intentionality and healing, intentional with reaping good things, not just for ourselves, but for the others that are around us. And then once we have just this intentional healing in our soil, it's going to make us more compatible in what we want to see in our lives and what we want to manifest, what we want to happen, and the things that we want to change about ourselves. In conclusion, I just want to remind you of a couple truths about our lives. One, you have a purpose in this world. And you didn't get this for only yourself. Your purpose is not only just for you. you didn't get this far to go backwards. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing this episode with somebody that can benefit from it. And thank you for just choosing you, most of all.